Elliot, can you hear us?
Just now, just started, yes. Yes.
Okay,
Good
cool.
morning.
Thank you. You missed my usual spiel, but you can give it at this point, you know, it's a public meeting.
Et
Minutes,
cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
et cetera, right, minutes are being taken, et cetera. Can you hear us, Stephanie? I think you probably can at this point. Okay, cool. We were just saying, we don't have Margie and we don't have Bob Perkins with us confirmed. Mark Siegenthaler is not here yet. I haven't been told if he's not here, but we're getting started. Tom is a voting member today, and Elliot, for you guys on Zoom, if you want to say something or something, please yell, scream, flail your arms, do something, because it's hard for me to be looking at two things at the same time. All right, I think that's pretty much it. We have a good agenda today, but not a giant one, hopefully. Public input on the non-agenda items. Does anybody have anything they want to? All right, thank you, Janice.
Thanks, Jen.
No public input on non-agenda items. Cool. Moving along to the July meeting minutes. Did anybody get a chance to read them? You all always win a gold star if you do.
I
do
did-
it perfect.
I did scan them over.
All right,
while I was
Richard,
eating
thank you.
breakfast this morning.
Excellent. They were pretty clean. I didn't see, as they always are, pretty clean, Bruce. But I didn't see anything. Did anybody see anything they want to amend or any? No. If not, could we have a motion on the minutes for July 11th?
A motion, I don't know if I
Yeah, you
can.
can, yeah, you create them. Bruce makes a motion to accept the July 11th minutes. The second, anybody? Tom, thank you for the second. Further discussion on those meeting minutes. All those in favor? Elliot, you gotta raise your hand if you're.
I did not attend the meeting in July.
Oh, you didn't? That's right. All right. Well, we're gonna go with 3-0 then. Accepted on a 3-0 count. Is that it? All righty. What about next? All right, so next we have, and thank you, Sophie, for coming. We have the status report, as I called it, on the zoning amendments related to the pier moratorium, and the report that we created a while back. So, let's see, I just thought, I circulated yesterday the agenda, or excuse me, the packet materials from tonight's meeting. It's a little weird. So it's stuff that the select board technically has.
Thank you for distributing just the pertinent parts.
Yeah.
Find me what you
You didn't want
want.
the budget information too, Richard?
Find me what you want in those packets.
I've gotten better at figuring out how to cut all the pages out.
You're telling me.
Yeah. You have to look at it.
But you read Jeremy Martin's memorandum, hopefully, which pretty, I think succinctly identifies the status, and in a nutshell, the planning board agreed with our report, and this was back in spring, and said, yes, this looks good. Let's send this to voters, but we also want to talk about and we think there should be a discussion about banning residential piers altogether. So it's a little bit of a two-step process, I guess you could say. So then there's been over the last few months, sort of a discussion at the select board level about how to implement that and how to get actual wording to the voters. So what you have in the packet from the select board is the exact wording changes. These are the changes that would be, codified to implement our recommendations. And I hope that everybody kind of can get a time to look through those. if you haven't, maybe look through them before tonight. Because I think the select board is probably gonna be finalizing the wording.
We need to,
Yeah.
in order to make it to the, right,
Yeah, but
we need to
Timing.
finalize the timing. It is very short now. I think tonight's our last chance to wordsmith anything.
Yep.
Because you know that the ballots have to be ADA compliant and it takes more time to produce them. That's the reason why we
Oh.
lost. Yeah, so it's great actually that we make things ADA compliant, but it just takes more time in the process.
What does that mean, ADA compliant, meaning, I mean, it's a paper ballot, isn't it? Like, is there a computer version that? someone
Yeah,
else
I
can
think
do?
it's readable for,
Oh,
I
cool.
mean, I don't know exactly what it is. I should
yeah,
look
I
into
don't- I have
that,
no idea what that,
but
Yeah,
but somebody does, so
it's-
I don't, I
And
think.
it's important
I
to a
don't think-
lot of people, so that's great.
exactly.
The most important thing, I mean, as I said, hopefully you guys can read through all of what they've done, because it's, you know, they've struck out sections of the code of the Harbor and Waterways Code, as they call it now, and rewritten it, as it were. But then at the end is the possible warrant article. That's sort of the main, not the main thing, but that's what the voters will see. So if you would please review that carefully. I did review it and actually already communicated with Jeremy Martin, because it didn't have the word residential in
Yeah.
there. It said to require that existing piers, existing residential piers, everything.
Yeah, commercial piers are not included.
Commercial municipal piers are not included in this, only residential.
May I ask a question, Sophie? When do you think that you will include commercial piers?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, this was not the scope. The commercial piers were never included.
Well, I mean, all these
Yeah.
things that are being discussed about the environmental impact, and I can't believe that if they apply to a residential pier, they don't also apply to a commercial pier.
Or town here.
Or town
Or
municipal
municipal
pier,
pier,
yeah.
Right, I mean, if you're gonna carve out just the residents
Well,
with these concerns, and I mean, you read these letters, they don't want piers. So
Yeah,
at some point, I would think that commercial,
a municipal.
there should be a moratorium across the board.
I think in this, because all the work that we did was very, very specific to the moratorium, we are only responding to the
Right.
moratorium.
Yes.
And that specifically was only, I hear what you're saying, Tom, but there could be a follow-up.
I think
You
the
know.
ordinance has other stuff in it that dramatically restricts
Commercial.
commercial.
Yeah, they have sort of
piers. Yeah,
second
you could
step.
not build a commercial pier in the coastal harbor.
So do we have any residential piers in the town or docks in which a commercial vessel operates off of?
Any commercial
No.
music?
Well, on
Stuart
Jacob,
Smith,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do, yeah.
Those-
you know.
but those are wharfs, they're not.
they're wharfs. they're not
No.
piers.
That's an interesting question.
And are they exempt or?
Well,
Well,
these
they're
are
exempt from this.
from this, yeah.
From this, they're not, it
This
doesn't
is
apply. This is
outer
also
coastal
only outer.
residential.
Yeah, this is only outer and coastal.
We didn't look, the inner harbor was not included in the moratorium. Because
Right.
can't build it.
Just because there's no space.
Yeah, you can't, it would be very, really hard to build a pier in the inner harbor.
Yeah.
I mean, we can make the recommendation. I mean, you can always make
No,
the
I
recommendation.
just wanted to.
No, I think it's a-
start
it's a-
the Discussion, because as I read
Yep,
I read the comments from the residents,
Yeah,
they're
I
seem
think-
to be opposed to growth,
these,
to
these,
any kind of, construction, so.
when you read these letters, these individuals definitely, I think that is an accurate, statement. Some of the letters are, you know, remarkably similar. And so I think that
Yeah.
they, you know, they are sharing one sentiment. I think that is exactly right.
Yeah.
But again, that is who wrote in, and that is.
Oh, yeah.
We appreciate
No,
them
I
writing
just
in.
didn't know whether that was something that you had on your horizon.
Yeah,
I mean, we could ask, I mean, you already have a very tall, you have,
yeah, I don't know, I was
you have a new project to work on. But I think it's a completely valid proposal recommendation to look into commercial and municipal, but I don't see the urgency. I think the issue with the private peers was that multiplication.
So the six,
Well,
rapid-
so the six that were possible were pretty urgent.
Well, there's three or four.
Four.
But I don't know if that fourth one, that one bottoms out, and I don't think
That was
Army
an
Corps-
over Lake Beach area.
Yeah, and I don't think Army Corps will approve when the bottoms out.
Did that one.
So
So I'm-
really,
I
the whole
support-
thing really circles around three piers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, Tom, I think we have to be very careful that it sounds funny, but we work at the direction of the.
Oh, no, I was,
And they
that's
haven't,
why I was.
yeah, and they haven't given us.
Because I just wondered if it was on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't wanna even sort of guess what's on their horizon.
And
You
It's
know.
also three piers in the outer harbor, but also piers in the coastal harbor. And I, one foggy day coming back from Castine, I think I came all the way down the coast. And there's a couple places where people have built these elaborate stairways down,
Right.
but I don't see any place where you could put a pier
Mm.
that the length of the ramp
Don't-
would touch the float.
Don't say that.
Yeah, cause you never know.
You never know.
But I'm saying if it's not gonna be a huge proliferation of piers there.
That seems unlikely.
You could possibly
I think-
maybe find one or two spots, because the length of the ramp is set, right?
Whether that was something that wasn't, because I haven't been to a select.
You can't
meeting,
build
so I
it.
Didn't know whether that was.
So in terms of sort of where,
I think we do mention it, but I can't remember what the length is.
But
Yeah.
the recommendation from the zoning board, planning board, the planning board was to not authorize building piers on the coastal harbor because there's none between
Right,
Camden and Lincolnville.
there's a couple stairs.
Yeah, the couple of there are no piers, and from their perspective, it was more like an environmental conservation
They wanted to
perspective, they
remain
wanted
pristine, I
pristine
think, pristine,
coast, you know.
but
So
I don't see where you could build one anyways. And there's plenty of riprap, and there's plenty of stairways.
We
on
passed that barrier years ago. There are, a variety of piers out there that have managed to survive in a fair enough amount of time.
so I think in terms of our work on this, I'll be frank, in the last few months, it's sort of, we've circled the
Yeah.
drain a little bit.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned though is we've done our work.
Yeah,
That's gone to the select board, then it went to the planning board. The planning board approved it, but also wants to do additional
Right.
discussions about banning piers, including maybe something in the coastal harbor. There's sort of discussions, but nothing formal has come. So
Yeah.
from where we are, we're not gonna do anything. We've done our work. It's, with a lot of work, and it is now hopefully going to go to the voters, and they may approve it, they may not, we'll find out.
it's interesting that they've written all this ordinance changes for the recommendations. So they're gonna go through this whole thing and have to write another ordinance to get rid of all this to say there are.
If they,
no-
if they were to ban.
But so remember that the recommendations you made on the height
Yeah,
and on the detachable floats and all those things will stay.
yeah,
And that the planning
Oh.
board agrees with that set of recommendation and has approved them. So on that, like, first half of the proposal, that's gonna be in the ordinance, so.
yeah.
I mean, that's the change that we're proposing. The banning of building new piers will be a different article.
Oh, because, yeah, there's new
At
piers.
some point in the future.
Yeah, maybe, right, exactly.
I thought this memorandum was excellent. They did a really good job.
Yeah, he really boiled
Very
it,
good job,
he
yeah.
really boiled it down.
My one concern is that in the coastal harbor, they want new piers and any damaged piers that are rebuilt to be 10 feet above the mean height. And how steep will that ramp be if it's 10 feet above the mean high tide? At low tide, you're talking about a 20, 21, 22 foot drop. But that's a not a big concern.
Wouldn't it be 10 foot drop? Wouldn't it be the high tide?
Well, 10 foot to the high tide, but at low tide, you gotta drop 11 feet from the high
Well,
tide
if
line.
it's at the same level as at high tide, you know what I mean?
It's supposed to be 10 feet above
yeah,
high
no, I
tide.
see now. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
at low tide, you're gonna be another 11 feet down, so at least 21 foot drop, I don't know. And that there's a restriction on how long that ramp can be, so it's just gonna get steeper and
Right.
steeper. But that's
Okay,
a problem for the future,
exactly.
I think.
And then there'd be,
Very concerned.
then there'll be a second, question, if you will, that I think will be a second question, but I'm not
Yeah.
positive on that. I think it's what has to be a second question, is whether to extend the moratorium again. So it'll be implementing these ordinance things and extend the moratorium, and
So we can-
secondly,
So we can work on the second part of the equation, if you will, on banning,
on banning, it, having that
how do we
discussion.
do it,
But
how,
it's a two-part,
it's a two-part.
Okay.
thing.
I thought the extension of moratorium was so that it could get voted on. You have to extend it to make it through November.
Yeah,
That was the last time, yes.
Oh, okay.
But now, they're going to, well, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but that's what I've been told, is that they're going to try to then extend it.
Just to continue the
just to-
conversation.
To then continue that conversation. So all the proposals, all the work of our ordinance would sort of sit in limbo. It would be approved.
Mhm.
It would be approved by the voters. But it would not be actually implemented because the moratorium would sort of hold it to the side.
we may also have a narrower scope of the moratorium for the ban, so it might be a second one. I know that Jeremy and Bill Kelly were working on that, because it raised a lot of questions at the last board meeting on how do we make sure that we have the moratorium covered, so all the committees involved can do the work, without going too many times to the voters.
Okay, any questions on that? You good?
But if I may recommend one thing or suggest one thing, keep communications with, to stay in communication, that the Harbor Committee stays in communication with the planning board or other committees who are working on this topic. Because I think it's valuable when the different parties involved get into the same room at the same time. I think
yeah.
in terms of time efficiencies, I think it's a good thing to think of.
I definitely.
So just
agree.
a suggestion.
No, and I try to sort of pay attention to what they're doing. I'm gonna kick that back a little bit and say, we serve again we only take direction from the select board. We don't take it from town staff. We don't take it from the planning board. So it's really important that if they want something, they kind of have to go back to you and then back to us. It's sort of stupid, to be honest. But that is where we kind of have to take our direction. All right, so that's moving forward. So we'll have something in November at least to chew on, I think. I'm gonna change the agenda order just briefly. Steve Bixley is on vacation today, so he does not have a harbor master report. I'm in the harbor every day. It seems quite good. Seems quite busy. The harbor was slow to get going. And, but once it did, it really kicked into high gear. Cam Classics Cup was a huge success. That was a big one this year.
That's beautiful.
And it was fun. It was a really great event. And then the Eggemogan Reach Regatta, I always sort of almost forget about that, the Thursday night feeder race. You know, it's pretty awesome. So kind of bring the harbor alive, which is awfully fun. Now the big boats start coming.
I was out for the race, and to see all the schooners wing on wing coming down the harbor was amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And we did have, this is very cool. We had more participation from the Windjammers this year. We always, the Camden Classics Cup always reaches out to get them. And we had Grace Bailey this year and Stephen Tabor.
Who won?
Of course, Lion well, but a couple of other ones came from Portland, schooners. So anyway, great group. Very excited to have them. Anything else about the harbor? Anybody?
Yes, actually, and maybe we can address it at the next meeting, or I can take that back to Audra. There seems to be a few complaints about speed in the harbor.
I've heard this complaint before.
So maybe if we can put it in the minutes that I'll take it back to Audra so she can
Did
talk.
you get any more specifics? about
Yes,
it
so-
in general, or is
So there are some power boats that seem to be going very fast in the outer harbor. And I see them, and I'm not the only one who sees them. And I think also there's an issue around the harbor master, the assistant harbor master, thinking that launches are going too fast, both at the yacht club and at Simon North. So, because all of the launch drivers have shared that with me, and I mean, from my experience, the launch drivers are pretty conservative and do respect, but maybe something to look into and make sure that everybody drives at the, legal speed in the harbors and.
That comes up every summer.
Unfortunately, standing on a shore and determining the speed at which a vessel is going is a difficult chore.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you, but
And
5 miles per hour is, it's pretty easy to see that when people are not at 5 miles per hour.
Well, where does the 5 miles an hour start? It starts at the
so
beginning of the,
outer buoy.
Outer buoy.
at the outer buoy,
Yeah.
then we should have 5 mile an hour.
Yeah, you can
used
post
to.
it. We used to.
It used
We
to
should
say
post it.
5 miles per hour.
Now it's posted actually up the channel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's posted up the channel.
Beginning of the mark.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'll, because I don't want to wait until September, so I'll share that with Audra.
And let's
have her
ask, yeah,
work
we
on it.
could do an interim, we can check with Steve,
Yeah.
see what, because he's brought that up every summer.
I know.
That he's had concerns with
I know.
speed in the harbor, so
Yeah.
gotta get everybody to slow down.
Especially with the kayaks and the kids in the opties and
Yep.
things like that, you really don't want.
Yep.
It's not a long way to wait until you're,
So at the buoy, is that the red number 1? Buoy or the-
No, it's the town, my understanding, we should get this from Steve, my understanding is it's the outer
Channel.
town buoy, it's.
Oh, okay,
it's where you make
okay.
the turn and stuff.
Yeah, at the
towards
channel.
Curtis Island.
Yeah.
All right, I don't think there's anything more that he had to report. So now let's talk about the select board asked us to look into the process for the transfer of day sailor and windjammer licenses in berths.
and there are 4 things included in this, right? Yeah,
Day sailor licenses, day sailor berths, windjammer licenses, windjammer berths, is that?
let me check the minutes. So I think. I think the first, all right. Clarification on license transfer application process review, allocation of birth fees schedule update, and opening application process, make it more transparent.
Okay. I think it'll all be part of it, but yes.
Yes, but just to be, because I think one of my recommendations is to set the scope of the work
Mhm.
correctly at the onset.
All right, so let's talk about those again one more time. So it's license transfers,
Yeah,
birth transfers.
Yeah.
Or the
birth fee schedule
fee schedule,
for the birth.
which comes up in December, but yeah. we'll
Yeah.
talk about that. And then transparency in the process.
Yeah.
What's that last one, Josh?
Transparency in the process. So that folks know how the process is working, how they can get involved, how they can participate, how decisions are being made. These are all public arrangements, public agreements, so everything about them should be public.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There shouldn't be
Yeah.
anything that's happening
Yeah.
behind closed doors.
Yeah.
We have done
And we're talking windjammers.
windjammers and day
day
sailors.
sailors.
Yep. we've
Just to
done
be specific.
the both, yep,
Right.
yep, because they
Yep.
operate exactly the same. And in looking back through, we have had 2 recent transfers. One of the day sailor Lazy Jack 2 and one of the windjammer Louis R. French. So I grabbed both of those documents so that we have them. They have. My understanding is they have, well, not my understanding, we have 2 agreements, 2 license agreements. Let's take the licenses first. They have a license for operating from the town. And that is the commercial passenger vessel agreement. Commercial passenger vessel license agreements. And then there's the addendum that allows them to operate from a particular location. And that's, when I say that, that's important, that allows them to transfer passengers from that particular location. That is different than an overnight berth. Because, for instance, some of the day sailors use, if you will, through the town, a spot at the head of the harbor where like the windjammers tie up. When the windjammers are gone, they tie there, they are not allowed to transfer passengers there. That can only be an overnight berth, so that's why it's two very separate, process. Let's see. I went through the Harbor and Waterways ordinance. Thank you, Janice, for showing me how to do that. I lost it again. But, I'm actually gonna try to pull it up because there was one section that was,
You can put it on, I don't know, put it on iPad.
sorry, say that again.
No, nothing. With a laptop, you can airdrop it on the screen, but it's not.
Let me exceed my, technological knowledge. But hold on, I'm going to find, here we go. I found all the information on the, Harbor and Waterways,
It's on our website, because now we've digital.
oh, that's how we did it.
Yeah,
Heard-
On the town website, you have all the ordinances are now available, because we've
And
digitized
it's,
them.
and it's a little bit easier than the link, the Word document.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would be interested to know if anyone, well,
So I think one of the issues also is the transfer of the berth has commercial value.
yes,
So when the reason why berth and boat have been transferred at the same time and up until now, if I understand correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, is because there's a lot of commercial value in having, of course, a berth for your boat.
yes.
I'm
Um,
not sure. Sophie, what's your point there? I'm not sure I understand.
To consider I mean, these are businesses, right? So considering in the scope, in the consideration and the work that the harbor committee is going to do, I think considering the commercial value of having a berth and the transfer of berth and boat at the same time is something you may want to appraise.
Isn't
I'm
the
just-
value
I'm
of
not- I don't have an opinion. I'm just saying that one of the issues that arose when we looked at the transfer this summer of, what was it? Lazy Jack, it was Lazy Jack, was that holding up the transfer,
Right, there are two, that's why.
impacts the commercial business.
That's why the birthing slip is so, we need to be very careful that we keep that separate because in the Harbor and Waterways ordinance, the commercial passenger float and birthing slips section 108-19. It specifically says windjammer birthing slips, the harbor area immediately easterly of the floats extending easterly from the town landing shall be designated as windjammer birthing slips and shall not exceed 3 slips. The harbor area immediately adjacent to the harbor park at the head of the harbor shall be designated as windjammer berthing slips and shall not exceed 3 in number. Windjammer berthing slips by lease shall be used only for sailing vessels which are not operated as day sailor operations from those slips. The select board may elect to permit the use of these slips by windjammers by a lease or written agreement for a term not to exceed 3 years, which we've done. In the event that the berthing slip is not being used by the vessel to which the slip has been leased, then the town can rent that berthing slip temporarily to other vessels as long as those other vessels do not unreasonably interfere with the use by the vessel that has a lease on that slip. But anyway, that was the only reference that I could find in here to how the town has an arrangement. And I don't have a document for it, and I'm curious, we have a lease, it's on the fee schedule. It's on the fee schedule, but I don't have a document,
Lease agreement.
but there's no lease agreement that I could find. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but that's one of the things that I think we need to ask Audra.
I can,
Is
definitely.
ask town staff is say, is there a formal agreement for that?
And also in that agreement, much like a commercial property lease, is the tenant given a right of first refusal,
An option
on the
renewal. Right.
of the lease? So if, they can get the lease for 3 years, but they have the first right of refusal on the next term,
Correct.
then they essentially have a 6-year term.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which from a commercial standpoint gives even more value
Yep.
to
Correct.
that piece of real estate.
Oh, hi, Elliot.
Hi, getting back to Sophie's point about the berth having a value. Is that not factored into the calculation of the annual fee or the agreement fee?
Yeah, it's factored into the fee schedule for the berth, because again, there's the fee schedule has the commercial passenger vessel license agreement. That's one number, but then there's the berth, the overnight berth. And I forget what it is, I can even look it up, but so it's two separate things, and I think in terms of the value of it, it is, I'm not sure that it has a commercial value. It's
Only in so much as somebody was gonna transfer it, because then they could use that as saying, okay, I'm gonna
essentially,
sell you my business and it has.
And it
blah, blah,
and it has
blah.
Exactly.
right, yeah. It's essentially the same, although it's like obviously different, but it's similar to a mooring. You know what I mean? With this, okay, you have a mooring and you're gonna sell that with it's a place to put the boat. This is just a different place to put the boat.
Right, but the boats, but in Camden Harbor, if you sell your boat, you don't sell the mooring with it. That's two completely independent processes. It's only for the windjammers and the sailors that we have this issue.
I think we're dead in the water till we get a copy of.
And
That
Janice
we-
was just on Zoom. Janice? Oh, she disappeared again.
To see if there is an agreement.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is, there may not.
Yeah.
And my point, Elliot, is that if there are two different processes, that they need to be very well aligned, because we don't want a gap
Yeah,
And you wanna be
and
transparent.
we want to be transparent, right? That's why I'm raising this issue,
mhm.
because we don't want any windjammer, if they decide to sell their boat, say, oh, and in 6 months you need to apply for the berth.
And the same would be true, I would, so just not to muddy the water a little bit, but I'm going to, the license transfer. So let's talk about transfer, we're talking about transferring now. In the license agreement, the commercial passenger vessel license agreement, I did not find anything, and I might have missed it, that talked about, to your point, about a renewal option.
Right.
What I did find is, in the Harbor Waterways ordinance, that there is preference given
Yeah.
to yes, in reviewing and acting upon any application for lease or rental agreement, the select board may, among other things, consider the current uses and users of the facility for which the application applies. Preference will be given to current day sailor owners who have abided by this chapter. So that doesn't give you the option, but it gives you the, it is something, it gives you.
I think it improves their standing.
It improves their standing, exactly.
Except for, according to that, it goes with the owner, not with the boat.
That's the other issue. He's
Um,
right.
Okay, Josh,
hello,
in Article 5, 108-19, Section B, windjammer berthing slips.
Yep.
And there is under that, item 1 and 2. And starting, select board may elect to rent or lease. I was reading those two, 1 and 2, and it seemed to me that there was some redundancy there in those two statements. Did I interpret those correctly?
I'm not, are you under town day sailor float or are you under windjammer berthing slips?
Well, I don't have the document pulled up, but I'm looking at my notes here under Article 5, 108-19, commercial passenger float and berthing slips.
Yep,
There's item A, town day sailor float. Item B, windjammer berthing slips. And
Yep.
then under B there is 1 and 2.
oh, that's not in the, are you maybe looking at an old ordinance? That's not in the ordinance that's been codified, the code as they now call it.
There's a 1 and 2 under A.
Under the town day sailor float, but not for the windjammers.
Well, okay, perhaps I noted this incorrectly. I'd have to pull this up. I was looking at the document that was sent by Janice.
Yeah, and that is, I think it's probably, Elliot, I think it's probably referring to the day sailors, because the day sailors have a little bit of a unique arrangement, if you will, in that they have that one day sailor dock, if you will, I want to call it that. Where they load and offload passengers.
It's heavily shared.
Which is heavily shared, and that's what the public landing addendum gives them the right to use to transfer passengers on. It does not give them the right to berth there overnight. So that is almost a the commercial passenger vessel agreement for day sailors wouldn't have any utility without the public landing addendum for those 7 boats, because they would have no place to transfer their passengers. They do,
Right.
so, yeah, so I think that's what that's referring to. But my point is that I don't think the reference to, the harbor committee will make recommendations about, day sailor and windjammer licenses. And we'll take in all these factors in reviewing and acting upon. The select board may answer other things. Preference will be given to current, it does say day sail owners who have abided by this chapter. It does not say windjammer, which it should.
Yeah.
I think that would be a sort of
Well, that's-
clerical change at that point. But that is the only reference I could find to.
Okay, so I understand, I have pulled up the document now. I see that the 1 and 2 are under the day sailor float. And again, I thought I saw some redundancy there. Under the windjammer berthing slips, it says windjammer berthing slips by lease. Does that not imply that the berthing slip is part of the lease?
It is, the Windjammer Park addendum. It sort of, I will agree that it sort of says 2 things. It sort of says that this is not a lease, but this is a lease. I think somewhere in it says there's no.
So maybe instead of getting in the weeds today, map out the things you wanna look into, and these are all excellent ones, because I don't think you're gonna solve anything today.
No.
But because it's a huge piece of work, I realize this. And I also wanted to add another thing, if I may.
To the 4? We've only done 2.
But remember how there was a confusion about the process for the license transfer?
Mhm.
That it went to the select board without a recommendation from the harbor committee, so we tabled it until the harbor committee reviewed it, and then it came back to the select board. So I think maybe clarifying the process as well.
That is actually in here. That I did find that.
But then we were all confused then.
The harbor committee will make recommendations about day sail license and blah, blah, will make recommendations. The select board.
But
and then
license,
it says, in
does it
reviewing-
include license transfers?
It just says day sail license, the word transfer is not in here anywhere. Exactly. That's the biggest
So-
thing, is that it doesn't seem that there is a reference anywhere in here to transfer, except for that one reference that says preference will be given to current day sailor owners who have abided by this chapter.
Right.
Owners who have abided by this chapter. So,
Let's make it clear that the process is the same, whether it's a sale or a transfer or whatever you're gonna recommend. I'm not gonna,
mhm.
but we need to avoid this type of places where we're missing a word and then people think, oh,
Right.
So your intent in
we wanna have
giving
it.
this to the committee is to give the select board more clarification. So this should not be all that overwhelming in terms of going through it and making sure that transfers are covered top to bottom.
I mean, it's embarrassing
That we
that,
understand what the lease actually looks like.
Right.
yep,
so that everybody's dealing with the same. And I see where it says lease and written rental agreement, so if you have a windjammer and you're going to be away, I believe there is a provision to rent that berth, is that
Where is
correct?
it? That's right in,
For the
yeah,
town.
it says,
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
town.
and so,
So that's where that rental agreement
right,
would be applicable.
correct, that rental agreement for the
And it may
berth.
be short term, just because of the absence of
And
it.
that's what it is, it's, well, the French is coming back, so now.
Right, right.
So does that mean when the surprise is at that dock, they're paying the town money for that dock space?
If they're using
I
the
think it's a seasonal fee.
seasonal
The
fee,
seasonal fee.
That
yeah,
they can use it when, okay,
when the French is not there for surprises,
Okay.
when the French isn't there, they can
But
use
there
it,
is,
they pay for that.
but there is something written.
And that's what we need to get, so that's what she's gonna get that.
All right, that's
Because
good.
then we'll have the three pieces. Then we'll have, because we have the commercial passenger vessel license agreement, the library park or town landing addendum, and then we'll have the berthing agreement as well. We'll have all
So
three.
we as a committee, if we simply go through it as an applicant, I think it would be a good exercise for us to say, I have a vessel. What do I do? What's 1, 2, 3, 4,
and then we
5,
can,
6?
then we can put our boats on the docks.
Exactly. No, I mean, but
Yeah, I
that
agree.
gives you kind of a understanding of what is the step-by-step logical process.
And I think we'll then also be able to hopefully get input from the participants right now about what that means in terms of a transfer. You know what I mean? Some of these boats may transfer soon, who knows? And how is that, the value for them of that business will change based on the ability to transfer it to a new owner. If it goes to a completely open, well, you're just the same as a brand new boat coming in, that will have less value. You know what I mean? If it's Surprise or whoever it is.
And I think there might be one more piece. What happens when a boat leaves?
Well-
What's the replacement, because we got into the thing of Grace Bailey left, and so all of a
Yeah.
sudden they wanted to put a new float in because the bowsprit wasn't there.
But I read through this, I was quite interested in that, and I read through this, and in fact, there are 3 berths. One of them is
Right.
currently vacant.
Yeah.
But there are 3 windjammer berths there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we didn't
Boat
act on
used to
that.
use that 50 years.
The Bowden used it, I mean, who knows, Stephen Tabor might come back, you never
Yeah.
know, there could be some other windjammer that wants to come, so. I'm glad we haven't done anything to impede that, I do think, and I've started talking to Steve about this. We had a unique situation for 75 years, or however it was, where the 3 boats that were 3 windjammers that were using the public landing berths were all owned by the same person. That was a unique situation. That is likely no longer going to be the case. So how do we make those 3 berths usable by windjammers with different owners?
Yeah, well,
There's
we have a model called the day sail float.
Yeah, it's a little bit different of
It
a
is
structure over there, but yes, exactly. There's a way to do it. If people want to work together, then, there's a way that we can do it, I think. So, but yes, what happens if another one leaves? This is something, I see that berth being empty and I think, oh, that's not awesome.
I personally think that the Swift ought to be out there, not
Yeah.
taking up
I take a
dock
inside
space,
spot. But that's one of-
that's an issue.
Well, but the Swift is in the third spot. It's
Well,
in-
no, it isn't.
Yeah.
Third stop, the 3 spots are beyond. Are where the mercantile and formerly the Grace Bailey and one was beyond.
No, not according to the ordinance, it's in that little diagram, it's where the Merc was, Grace Bailey, and then Mistress. The Mistress had, and where the Swift is now is where the Mistress was.
Well, yes,
You think there should be a third one on the
I
outside?
think it's the third one on the avatar historically.
Hmm.
I'll have to read that again.
Yeah, that would be.
One. On a slightly different topic, legally, what's it in between shall and will?
I don't think there is a difference.
Well, I think legally there is a difference. We probably need.
Yeah,
we
shall has
probably
wiggle
need-
room, I think.
But not,
No,
shall
shall
has
is no.
no wiggle room.
Oh, it doesn't? It
You
will?
shall, it's a command, you will,
Oh, okay.
you shall.
And I
Huh, I don't know.
No.
think that there are just some lines in here.
Yeah, some of this is.
Under C, so in September, the select board will make a decision as to whether to lease or rent anything.
Yeah.
And there's lots of shalls, and there's a couple more will floating around too. Whether they're there intentionally or just because that's the way someone wrote that second.
So in terms of our,
I'm
Sure,
making,
work-
no, but I'm making a
well-
note of this because I think once Elliot
clean it up.
is waving his hand. But once you have decided on the process and make recommendations, we can clean up the whole thing in one sweep.
Yeah.
And make it, and I will rely on Bill Kelly's legal authority.
Elliot,
Okay, this question is directed to Sophie. In general, are town business licenses transferable?
Not to my knowledge. I think you have to,
great question,
it's a
Elliot.
great question. I will
why don't we get other? why don't we-
get back, I'm adding that to my list of questions to Audra.
How do we?
My understanding is that if you, because I'm thinking of the licenses we approve for
Symbol or something.
lodging, liquor licenses, and every time there's a new owner, they come.
Harbor dogs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Dogs.
think it should
Harbor
be,
dogs is.
I'd be interested in, yeah, the ones that operate off of municipal property, so Harbor Dogs and the thing at the Snowball.
Snowball is Harbor Dogs also, it's
Oh,
the
it
same
is?
owner.
Oh,
Yeah,
how do those arrangements work? How do they renew and or is there some provision for someone else to get into that? How does that work?
because Harbor
Yeah.
Dog took over the lease, but we approved a new lease. But it was on the same, similar terms. Okay, it's an excellent question, Elliot. Thank you so much. I will get back to the committee on this.
Right, and a follow-up question I have to that is how and where is that transferability defined?
Yep.
I mean, I think we'll have to put it into, I see a change coming to these commercial passenger vessel license agreements.
Yeah, I think that's where it belongs.
That's where the transferability belongs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have your agreement.
What?
We don't have a copy of it.
No,
No, I mean for the commercial passenger vessel license agreement.
Oh,
Yeah, that's where I think we'll talk about, the transfer.
And that's something that doesn't need an ordinance, doesn't need to be voted upon to change?
no, I don't think
And we
so.
can change these.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be a
Okay, and my last question within this, on that subject for Sophie is, was the town lawyer consulted regarding the recent commercial passenger vessel transfers? Was the town lawyer involved in those? Or
I don't think
consulted?
so. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
This happens often enough.
Yeah.
And
Right.
The same topics come up every time, one of these transfers, whether it's a day sailor license or a Harbor Dogs license or
Yeah.
something at the Snowball.
And I mean, to be clear, like in the existing system for transferring, which is perhaps a looser system than it should be. There are numerous places where the town has the ability to not approve. It's not a rubber stamp by any means.
Right.
The harbor committee first has met with the applicants, which is what we did with the Lazy Jack too. And kind of got a sense of who they are, got their history, talked to the harbor master, all of that. Then it went to the select, after the recommendation of the harbor committee was done, then it went to the select board. The select board also has the opportunity then to query that person, that applicant, talk about it, and potentially deny it if there's something that they don't like. So it's by no means a rubber stamp, but I think that this process will clean it up and make it more clear for people considering getting into entering this business on town property.
Yes, and clean it up and make it more efficient and faster because that sale was held up between those three meetings, between the initial meeting in front of the select board and back to the harbor committee and back to us.
Because
Because
I'm not sure why, but it's-
because the process was not clear.
Right.
Because the first time we saw it, we said the harbor committee has to give a recommendation on this.
Right.
So a clear process will also allow a swift process, and I think that's what we really need to look for. Simplify the processes, clarifying them, so that we take the guessing out of those processes, so those businessmen can,
Right,
and women,
yes,
can go about their business faster, right? I
exactly.
think that's the point.
In terms of the fee schedule, discussion, I mean, that it does come up and that will come up, we should be doing that pretty soon, actually, looking at all the fees again. But that, if, I'm almost certain, I am certain that that's on the fee schedule, the overnight berthing for day sailors and for windjammers.
But there's no agreement,
Well,
right?
that's what we're gonna find out.
We're
if
gonna
there is
find
a-
out, yeah.
That's what we're gonna find out. There should be. I mean, because it's a decent amount of money.
Yeah,
I would hope that there is some sort of agreement, instead of a gentleman's handshake. So I think that's where the fee schedule part belongs, will be in that December thing. And then to the last point, the sort of transparency of the process. I think it's important that everybody knows because this is all happening on municipal property, on property that we all own collectively. It is all open book. There's nothing that should ever happen behind a closed door or there should be complete transparency. Everyone should be able to, and everyone can currently get a copy of the commercial passenger vessel license agreement for whatever vessel that they want. They should be able to see Steve's annual reports that he does on each of these things, et cetera. So I think we have a lot of transparency, but you want, what kind of transparency do you want?
So I'm thinking, and this is a hypothetical, and correct me again if I'm wrong here, huh? That I'm not thinking correctly. So what if Hesper wants to apply for a berth?
Mhm.
What is the process? Do we
Right.
have to wait for somebody to say, I'm giving up mine? Because if they can renew almost quasi automatically those 3-year lease agreements, how do you get in?
Well, I mean, it says in the ordinance that preference is given to those vessels who are already operating, so.
And there was a reason for that. We talked about that if you apply for a business loan to buy one of these boats, if you don't have a place to berth it or to get your passengers on and off, the bank's gonna say it's gonna be much harder to get that loan.
Sure, but I mean,
We,
to me, it's like, if you're not in, you're never getting in, right?
Well, but I mean, but the flip side of that is that as a business, you need to have the knowledge.
Continuity, I understand.
Continuity, exactly. So you need
To be able to
to
operate.
we
If it's
have Ray Williamson running,
Yeah,
the little powerboat, what was the name of it?
Sally.
Sally, I was trying to say Susie. And, I honestly don't know what happened behind the scenes. Did Ray agree to drop it? Or was there something else that, or was it Ray, if you don't drop it, we're not gonna recommend that you get it over again because you're not using it.
I think if I remember correctly, he didn't use it, and for 1 year, I think there was a COVID year or something in there, and maybe being worked on, I don't know, but then I remember there was 1 year where he just didn't use it,
Right.
and that is in the agreement that if you don't use it.
There is a user or lose it.
Yeah, we extended it a year, I think, and then.
Yeah,
after
and use or lose it, now I remember this, is part of Steve Pixley's annual review.
Right,
yes.
And if you didn't use it, the review is obviously very short, and therefore you lose it. That's.
I mean, my
that's
point-
a review.
My point is, in the course of your review, keep that in mind. And
Yeah.
if you find, and with talking with the windjammers and with the day sailors, that it's satisfactory, there's no need to change it, but I'm just raising the issue thinking.
Oh, maybe, yeah,
I think it's worth examining, but I'm not pushing for one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think we are in a slightly unique situation now, which we've not been in until this year, where all 7 of the day sailor licenses are taken.
Take it, yeah.
And used.
Up to this
And
point,
being.
And being used.
And you,
and actively
Yeah.
used, right? Up to this point, that has never been the
Yeah.
case. So there has, in the Hesper's case, they could have applied.
Yeah.
Up before this year.
Yeah.
And said, we wanna go for that 7th license.
Yeah.
And then that would have been up to the select board to decide, so, but now there's 7, so, well,
but since we're.
and there are 7, but
There's
they're. I was just trying to remember if Periwinkle is they're on a 3-year,
You know,
Yeah,
so you-
they're in the 3-year,
Yeah.
but with the annual review, and Steve's going to review it every year.
But it's in line with all the other 3.
Yep.
So it might
I
be
think
a
it's-
year and a half.
It's out of sync, yeah.
Is, is Hesper Ray's boat?
No,
No,
Hesper is another, it's a pilot cutter that is, has a mooring out in the outer harbor. And is, I guess, running some day sails, some.
yeah, and
some
they
week-longs.
pick up passengers at Steamboat Landing.
Is that what they pick them up?
I think that's how they do it. You know.
Okay.
Some of us, yeah.
And
And they did ask, to be
it's
fair,
my
they never
impression-
asked.
It's my impression that the Hesper is a hybrid day sailor windjammer. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what Hesper is, I'll be perfectly
She's
honest.
pretty, I mean.
It's a very beautiful boat, yeah.
Beautiful boat.
Very nice looking boat.
Yeah.
No, but I-
From a business standpoint, I don't, this committee has not seen an application
No.
from Hesper. I don't know if the
No.
town has seen.
No, no, and to be clear, I should have been clear. Hesper has not asked for this, has not applied for anything. I'm just taking Hesper as an example because that's the boat I have in my mind. But they actually sent the select board a note last year saying that they were not asking
Right,
for any mooring or anything, that they would come and just, be in the harbor. And it was very clear. So I'm not putting them on the spot. And Hesper, please, I apologize if you felt on the spot, but it was just for me.
no, but I think it was good that you raised it, because I did have that, I mean.
It's a potential boat. that could-
And I have a question I have had a question about Esper this year, because I think they are using Steamboat Landing for passenger loading, which I thought was part of the Steamboat Landing recommendations, that we were not using Steamboat Landing.
Yeah, that's what our recommendation was, but I don't know.
But I don't know if the
Well,
select
we-
board acted on that.
No, because we still have the 10-minute pickup, right? 15 minutes, we still.
Not for commercial passengers.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That was in the
Our
Steamboat,
recommendation.
but the Steamboat Landing report.
I don't know if anything acted, I don't know if it was ever acted
On
upon.
shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
So.
It's in a file.
I'll check with Steve what's happening with Hasper.
And again, nothing against Hesper by any.
No,
means.
but
It's a
just.
Gorgeous boat. and,
Yeah.
Seems to.
He handles it well too. I was
Yeah,
behind him when
It's all good.
he sailed it and docked it under
Oh,
sail.
yeah.
He had his engine running, but he docked it under sail. It was pretty
Purely from
cool.
a organizational or standpoint in the harbor. I don't know what the organization stands for.
great boat.
Great boat.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, do we feel like we have a little more guidance, clarity of what we're looking for in terms of evaluating the berth transfer? Oh, one thing I'm sorry, that I do want to clarify, and I'm gonna ask Steve about this. It's in this document, in the code, Harbor and Waterways, that talks about the windjammer berths at the head of the harbor. There shall be 3. There are, and the town may elect to rent those when the windjammers are not there to other vessels,
Yes,
all 3. Currently, there are 2 that are being used. The Angelique's berth is not being used when the Angelique is not there. And I've always wondered why. The dock was rebuilt. It's a little bit of a different dock than the other 2. It's not quite as long. There's some mooring issues. But again, it's sort of like the Grace Bailey leaving. I sort of wondered, is this an opportunity that the town is missing? To provide another berth for someone?
did you want me to check with Steve again?
Yeah.
Also, I'll put on a list of things that I'll send to Audra and Steve to check. Okay, perfect.
I like having the day sailors in there when
It's
they're
pretty.
missing, because the harbor looks empty when
Yeah.
the
Right.
windjammers are out.
No,
It's
it
good to
works
have
great.
those masts there, yeah.
It looks great, and then they know they have to leave. And sometimes it gets a little dicey because those boats might come in because of the weather or
Yeah.
something, and they know. The parents used to get the call. the time. All right, anything else on that, anybody up there?
I have a question. What's the limit on the number of committee members that can meet and discuss Harbor Committee business without it being a public meeting?
I believe it's two.
Two. That sounds.
I'm pretty sure
what
it's
I
two.
recall also.
I think if it's more than two, it becomes a public meeting.
Okay.
But you can, maybe you know this, I think you can communicate among more people via email. But then it becomes part of, because then that's a public document. That's part of it doesn't make it a meeting, but it means that you can have a discussion for what it's worth, via email. But again, that is a public document, that is just like a public meeting.
I would, yeah, be careful with that, because if it meets the minimum requirement for public meetings, that it means that those conversations need to be held in the public sphere. So of course, a Freedom of Information Act can request all of these, but I would be cautious with that.
Yeah, better for us to do our work here in this room, Elliot, during these meetings, even if it means, gosh, more meetings.
Agreed, yeah.
But it's better to do it here rather than doing homework outside.
I know there are a number of small towns that have had select boards of 3 members, which resulted in the fact that no 2 of them could even have a cup of coffee together.
Yeah, it's not 3 of us, yeah.
All right, anything else on this topic? We have some pretty good guidance. The goal of this, in terms of timelines, I always like to have a deadline for things, is that I think we need to have this wrapped up by December. Because December is when we're wrapping up the fee schedule, and that's when the annual reviews are completed, et cetera.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens.
That happens in December.
Okay.
Exactly. We are in, one sec, Tom, we are in the first year of the new 3-year term.
Yeah.
For the various vessels. So just so everybody knows kind of where we're at. Yeah. Tom.
If I owned a windjammer or a day sailor and I walked into the town offices in Camden and said, I'd like to operate my boat out of your harbor, who would I go see?
Yeah, you would start with probably the town manager.
Okay,
She would,
that's the first desk I'm gonna go to.
yeah.
The
she's-
harbor clerk or.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, I mean, I just would like to go through that exercise.
I think
Yeah,
it's a
I
great
think it's a
idea.
good idea.
We should
Say,
do that.
okay, here I am.
Yeah.
What paperwork do I need? What's the application look like? What's the process? And if we get that information, then we know what we're dealing with. I mean, right now, it's just.
I think your boat, Tom, it's gonna be a great one.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we could do that next meeting as like a field trip. We could all go up there and apply for it.
Well, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we're really.
No, that is what we're doing.
that's
Yeah.
Home base.
Yeah.
I mean, start, because like Sophie says, somebody comes and wants to do business in our town, how do they do it?
Yep, and how do we respond?
And that's your transparency.
Welcome them.
Right.
Yeah, and efficiency.
And if
Elliot.
if Paris saying that-
Josh,
you're right.
I heard you just mention that this issue should be resolved by December. And I presumably the issue you're referring to is this CPV transferability. Is that correct?
Yes, and birth transferability. Yep.
Right. And would that, whatever the outcome is, would that not be defined in the ordinance?
No, I don't think it would. I mean, we'll find out as we kind of go through the discussion. I think that it's going to be an adjustment to the commercial passenger vessel license agreement, which doesn't need to go to any kind of ordinance. And the commercial passenger vessel license, addendum. Neither of which need to go to an ordinance. If we want to change the harbor and waterways ordinance, then that will require a vote. We wouldn't obviously be able to get to November, so then we would look at June, you know what I mean?
But
If we determine that that was necessary.
Yeah, I don't think.
At the moment, I don't think it is, but you never know, we might dig in, decide.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all on that one. Upcoming meetings, topics, is the last item on the agenda always. obviously, this will be our sort of biggest, if the select board opts to do additional work on related to piers of any sort in any location, then that will be coming. I would, if you guys can, listen in tonight, there's gonna be, it's a discussion item
Yeah.
at the select board level. I often do that. I listen in on YouTube, rather than attending the meetings, although sometimes I attend. It's long. But, it would be good for us all to stay abreast of what's happening at the select board level as it relates to peers. So that we're not sort of, coming up to speed each time. We'll also have the fee schedule coming right up. And, I think those are the main topics. Steamboat landing is going to be a topic that's gonna be coming soon.
Yeah.
We've already issued our report, so I'm not sure what exactly, but Steve is feeling like Steamboat Landing is really kind of at the end of its life, I think. Without some money, without
Yeah.
putting some significant money into it. So I suspect that one's gonna come back around.
Agreed.
Anything else up there? Stephanie, you got anything for us? Good. Elliot, you're good? Thank you,
Good,
guys.
thank you.
Thank you guys for coming, making the time. I know it's kind of a busy time. Please do keep attending if at all possible.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Oh, yeah, next meeting. Let's schedule that. But we're always the second Tuesday. Let's just make sure that doesn't.
I thought it was Wednesdays.
Nope,
No,
Tuesdays.
2 days.
Always Tuesdays.
All three Tuesdays, okay.
It was always Tuesdays, then we moved it to Wednesdays for a year or two, so Bob could play hockey, but Bob doesn't play hockey and all that, so now we're back to Tuesdays.
And Bob doesn't show up.
And Bob
Doesn't show up.
Bob loses.
We'll remind him.
We've had several messages concerning Bob's presence or absence.
Yeah, exactly. So the 12th of September would be the next meeting. Does that work for everybody, just
Yeah.
tentatively? Good, let's go with that. It's my dog's birthday.
I have one additional question. Do we have anybody turning out?
I have not looked at the.
Could you double check? Because
schedule.
I'm not
I'm gonna check with Jan.
Alternates are a year,
right, so maybe
And-
we need to,
voting members are 3.
okay. But I don't
That's how
remember
the-
who's
the
a,
Select board does that, does the renewal.
I know.
The.
but usually, but
Didn't we
what,
just do it? I thought we just did it.
we did the community liaison.
I think we did the committees themselves, like a few months ago.
Well, they do it in
Yeah.
July historically.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did,
once
we
you
did, so
go
we're
up
good
to-
for the harbor committee.
Once you get through the June ballot.
No one's told me not to keep going, so.
There's one thing I'd like to change about that process,
Ah,
because I was an alternate. And I found out by happenstance that somebody had left and the select board was taking applications. So I would think an
Yeah.
alternate would
Yeah.
be informed that there was an opening.
You might asking Janice that.
I will double check. I think it's a very
I-
good recommendation. I like
I
this
did
idea
go
very
and
much.
apply immediately, and I got in, but,
But you're right, you
I-
should,
Yeah.
just almost from a perspective.
Yeah.
standpoint,
Yeah.
You should.
I did notice.
Josh, I do have one other point. Before the next meeting, I think it would be good if we had current, a set of commercial passenger vessel documents, current commercial passenger vessel documents to
So,
use to support our discussion.
yeah, used, Elliot, sorry, I didn't get back to you on that. I just went back to the, previous agenda items. And, the one for the, Lazy Jack was in the June meeting. So that is the commercial passenger vessel agreement. I wanted to make sure we had one that actually had ink on it, because I was like, this is the one that is being used.
Yeah,
And then the Louis R. French, I didn't bring the agenda date, but it was, I think it was January. I don't know. If you look back, you'll find we have those documents in your meeting minutes.
I can ask Janice to send them to the harbor committee.
that would be good.
Sure. I just want to make sure we had,
Yeah,
there were
so they're
several
current.
versions
Yeah.
flying around. I was like, oh boy,
Yeah.
little version vortex there.
Or we can all go in and apply. Like-
Version
like
vortex.
Go through the
Yes,
process.
thank you, Sophie.
All right, anything else? Nothing further. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Elliot.